All right, everyone, it seems James Comey is getting very defensive. Check out his new tweet here, in which he writes, an AG should not be echoing conspiracy theories. He should gather facts and show them. That is what justice is about. Justice? Oh, yeah? James Comey? Right. This is all, of course, in response to the Attorney General's recent interview, in which he doubles down on allegations of FBI spying on the Trump campaign in 2016. That interview has launched a firestorm of commentary, not just the interview, I should say, but rather his use of the word spying, right? Everybody's weighed in, and you get multiple explanations as to what the definition of spying really is. He has questions. Shouldn't every single one of us have questions? He's 1,000% right. Doesn't everyone want to understand what, why, how our intelligence agencies embarked on surveilling, i.e. spying, on a political campaign? You know, apparently not Comey. Apparently not the Democrats. Apparently none of them care. They just think it's fine to use intel agencies to spy on political opponents. That's totally fine. You don't care now at all? In response and under pressure, James Comey is making a rather desperate attempt to control the narrative, both with a recent op-ed in the Washington Post and, of course, that most recent tweet. And again, I'll show it to you. He says, an AG should not be echoing conspiracy theories. He should gather facts and show them. That is what justice is about. Okay. So first of all, it's not a conspiracy theory, right? To simply ask why FISA warrants were filed on political campaign personnel. I mean, if we really want to split hairs, sir, on conspiracy theories, how about the one that the president is a Russian agent based on all that great opposition research that you got from that dossier? Meanwhile, holier than thou James Comey, who used to work at a hedge fund, by the way, he likes to omit that part. It's as though he worked his entire life at the FBI, but hedge fund guy. Nothing wrong with them, just saying. Comey loves to talk about what justice, quote unquote, justice is. I mean, justice? Wouldn't real, actual justice be honestly figuring out what the heck happened? If James Comey actually cared about justice, our FBI would not have been so freewheeling with those FISA warrants to begin with. This is a guy who, while the president expressed repeated concerns about Intelligence Department leaks, remember all those, was actually out there willingly, deliberately leaking himself.
So I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. And so I asked a close friend of mine to do it.
And was that Mr. Wittes?
No, no.
Who was that?
A good friend of mine who's a professor at Columbia Law School.
Wow, what a guy, what a champ. What a patriot. Come on, this is a guy who basically, while everybody was saying, oh my gosh, there's all these leaks going on in the intelligence agencies, oh dear, he was out there as the leaker in chief, leading the way, teaching people how to leak. You know, you just call a friend up who knows somebody at the New York Times and you leak to them. It's important to understand, I think, how political all of this is. And specifically how political he is. I mean, what a self-serving opportunist. Don't forget, we haven't. Here's what he was saying back in December about Bill Barr.
I like and respect Bill Barr. I know he's an institutionalist who cares deeply about the integrity of the Justice Department, so I'm sure he'll use the standard career resources he has to judge what he should be involved in and what he shouldn't be involved in. But Bill Barr is a talented person who was a good Attorney General the first time. I liked him very much then. I think he'll serve the Justice Department well.
Yeah, right. Until he figures out the truth about you, that is. Mr. Comey, joining me right now, former Trump 2016 campaign advisor, Michael Caputo. It's good to see you again, sir. What's so twisted about all this, right, is that I think it's a very normal, decent, correct, right American thing to do, ask questions. Why would there be a FISA warrant based on opposition research on an opponent? in a political race? Why would you be trying to surveil, and I'll use the better term, right? Surveil people in the Trump campaign based on stuff that had been paid for by Hillary Clinton? Isn't that a fair question to ask no matter what side of the political aisle you're on?
It sure is, Trish, and thanks for having me on. You know, I'm also struck by the idea that now we're starting to find out through leaks from their side even, and information we're finding out from good digging investigative reporting, that it appears that all along the way here, that there were these individuals, whether it's Comey or Brennan or Clapper, others, they were tweaking, kind of, bending the law just a little bit. Some of them probably breaking the law to achieve their already determined end, and that was to spy upon the Republican candidate for president of the United States. It's not, we're going to see now how they worked through the FISA process, how they sidestepped, certain requirements in order to reach their goals. And I think it's going to frighten a lot of us. I think we're all going to be a little bit amazed at what people are willing to do because they have this kind of perverse sense of duty, this hubris that drove them to think that it was their duty to spy upon the Republican candidate for president of the United States.
Do you think that would have happened regardless of the candidate?
It's going to amaze us all when we find out.
I agree with you, and I think it, unfortunately, it could be very disheartening to a lot of people, but if that's the reality, we need to confront it. And it's better we know that reality than bury our heads in the sand and hope for, a better time around next time with more ethical people in play. Let me just ask you, though, Michael, do you think that it was Donald Trump in particular, or do you think that, this would have happened regardless because you had some political people that were in charge in Washington that wanted to effectively spy on the other side?
Oh, I think it's worth asking that question. I think it's worth finding out if they were spying on other potential Republican nominees. We had a pretty big field, just like they do this time, right? Mm-hmm. They couldn't have thought that it was, Donald Trump and only Donald Trump, say, in late 2015. They had to be looking at, Ted Cruz went pretty far along the way, right? Yeah. I think this stuff was going on a lot earlier. And, it doesn't really, it shouldn't shock us when we saw what they did with Fast and Furious, when we saw what they did with the IRS, when we saw what they did, the Obama White House spying upon AP and Fox News. They were warming. They were always warming up to this. And here's the thing that everybody needs to understand as we pull the different, layers of the onion back. It took this perverse sense of duty that also had to have a lot of faith in that perverse sense. Yeah. And that faith moved them to do this, probably working together. And if you believe in what Whitaker Chambers said in Witness back in, when the communists were buried in our government, if it took that much faith for them to get in there and hang there and do what they did, it's going to take even more faith for us to get rid of them and get to the bottom of this.
I hear you. Let me turn to another story making news, Michael. As long as I have you here, there's an author named Michael Wolff. He's making a number of splashy headlines right now, shall we say, because he's got a new book out about President Trump. And one of the headlines details Wolff claiming that the president's closest allies think he is, quote, vile. Watch.
What do people who have spent a lot of time close to the president think of him?
They think he is vile and ludicrous.
Ludicrous?
Ludicrous.
What do you mean by that word?
There's no logic to what he does. There's no way to anticipate what he's going to do. Often what he ends up doing defies logic, defies everybody's expectations, defies explanation.
You worked very carefully with the president. You know him. Michael Wolff has been largely discredited. I think there's even a Washington Post review out on this book right now that effectively said it had some cringeworthy errors and some thin sourcing that certainly should raise a whole lot of questions about its credibility. But aside from that, what's your reaction there to what Michael Wolff is saying?
Well, we know from some of the way they're picking this book apart that there's some just flat-out falsehoods woven throughout this whole entire book. But, it was just a month ago. I've known the president since 1988. I worked with him for years before the presidential campaign. Mm-hmm. And I was just with the president. He and the First Lady invited me and my wife and my children and my mother-in-law into the Oval Office to meet with us because I hadn't spoken to him for 2 years of this investigation. And when the report was filed, he called me and said, it's been 2 years. Come on in. I'll tell you what. What I saw for that 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes we spent with the president, it's the same guy I knew many years ago. All the terrible things that they've done to this president, the way that they've tried to ruin him, ruin his family, ruin his businesses, ruin all of his friends, it hasn't impacted him at all. The way he spent time
he's
trying
working.
to make my wife and my daughters feel better, and the gracious way he treated them.
That's good to hear, Michael. It
this whole
really
idea
is.
of
You know
him
what?
being
At
the
the
way
end
that
of all
Walt
of
described,
this,
it's
the
impossible.
big thing to remember is we are all human beings, including the President of the United States. And being kind to people one-on-one matters. Michael, it's good to see you. Thank you so much.